Welcome, truth seekers and freedom lovers. This is Makia with the Freedom Articles. It is video number 307 on Friday, April 10th, 2026. And I just watched a very interesting interview with Joe Kent on the Duran. Highly recommend it. Watch the whole thing if you can. If not, I'm going to summarize the salient points from it. But before we get into that, there's some background as always. Of course, it's not really a surprise with the so-called ceasefire that Trump announced that Israel has already been breaking it, and we don't even know at this point whether this thing will hold or not. And after you listen to this video, you might understand a bit more about why the reason that is. But for those who haven't heard, and I'm sure most of you have, Joe Kent was in the Trump administration until recently, and he is one of the few that had the backbone and the intestinal fortitude to actually stand up and decide to quit because he didn't like what was happening. And he could clearly see that the Israelis had hijacked Trump. They'd hijacked the American foreign policy. They'd gotten Trump to get on board with attacking Iran. And he called out how ridiculous and silly this was and how badly planned it was. And, he actually called it a lie. This was a lie and the same tactic the Israelis used to draw us into the disastrous Iraq war that cost our nation the lives of thousands of our best men and women. We cannot make this mistake again. And he's talking about the lie that Iran was an imminent threat. So, incredible that we still have people that are willing to, make a stand, even if it cost him his job. But he's learned a lot of respect from a lot of people. One door closes, another door opens. But anyway, in his little interview here with the Duran, he makes some points about Israel that I think are really worth emphasizing. And he actually has some real insider perspective on this, because he talks about in this interview how he was personally speaking with the current Mossad head, who is David Barnea. So anyway, I'm going to play a 2-minute clip and then give some analysis.
The Israelis are interesting because they sound very much like Americans in many cases, because a lot of them are dual citizens. However, they think very differently than we do. I've actually had this discussion with David Barnea well over a year ago when he said, hey, we think now is a great time for us to take down the Iranian regime by striking at the head of the snake, by striking at the Ayatollah, by striking at the IRGC. And the question I asked him was, I said, hey, don't you think that that's going to cause a rally around the flag effect? Like already the Ayatollah and the IRGC, they're not popular inside of Iran. So why don't we let that play out, sanction them, kill key leaders of terrorist organizations that are backed by Iran? But if we go for regime change, won't that work against that stated goal? And his answer was very interesting because he's a very smart guy. And he was like, yeah, we think that would happen initially. We think it might even happen for quite some time. But basically, the Israeli calculus was anything is better than Iran being strong. So even if it results in a high degree of chaos, the Israelis are okay with that. And so I think we have to realize that Israel's stated goal, even though a lot of times just for the sake of, expediency, we'll say it's regime change. Really, the Iranians are basically good with even just like regime chaos, regime decapitation, as long as the Iranians are not capable of striking and going on the offense against Israel. And also as long as we, the Americans, are footing the vast majority of the bill and shouldering the burden of the military operations. It's a very shrewd and pragmatic position that the Israelis have, but they just view it differently than we do. In the West, when we say that we're going to change regime, we want a step 1 through 10 solution on how this is going to work, and it needs to be clean, it needs to be tight, and there needs to be a timeline. The Israelis think in a very Middle Eastern sense, where they're like, we can create chaos and we can exploit chaos, and we're fine with chaos. And so again, this is where we have to be honest with ourselves and say that like our partner that we're paying for their entire defense budget, they really have a different goal than us. So we should not be partnered with them in this war. And we most certainly should not let their strategic objective that's different than ours dictate how the peace agreement goes.
So lots of really good points there. I'm going to go through them. So first of all, he points out how the Israelis, they seem very Western and rational, and a lot of them are dual citizens, but they have a very, very different mindset. And that's super important to understand, because there's this whole Israel first, you've got to be loyal to Israel thing that a lot of them have signed on to. Not all Israelis, but a lot of them are like that. And then there's a lot of Jews who are not even... they've never been to Israel, or if they've been, it's only been once. They don't live there, but they have also this kind of weird, fatalistic, religious loyalty to the place. So there's something about Israel that other countries don't share, where it's like this. It's this loyalty is indoctrinated into the kids, or it's basically you're brought up with it in some way. There's some expectation that you have to like not only like support Israel, but almost like in like an absolute fatalistic way, and give everything up for it. And it's very cultish, and that's why I called my recent book The Cult of the Chosen Ones, because it really is cult-like behavior. But his point is, look, Israeli strategic interests and objectives differ to that different to those of the US. And so that's important to understand when we're looking at why the US just seems to do whatever Israel wants. It's actually not in America's best interest, and he's breaking down specifically from the inside why it's not. He talks. I love this point though. That to me, this is one of the most important points. He talks about how yes, the Israelis want regime change, but if it doesn't happen, they're okay with that because they're okay with regime chaos. That's an important term. He even says they're fine with chaos. We can exploit chaos. He's talking about the Mossad head, David Barnea, saying that. We're fine with chaos. We can exploit chaos. So that's interesting because that goes back to the whole New World Order Freemasonic motto, order out of chaos. If they just create enough chaos, then they can use their psychopathic strategies to somehow bring that to their advantage. And so Trump may or may not realize all of this, but ultimately, a lot of these Israelis are brought up in a culture of Jewish supremacy where they're the chosen ones, they're special, and in extreme cases, they should rule, everyone else should serve them, and they get to decide who lives and dies. And what's happening is that they're trying to fulfill their mission statement of this greater Israel. And this is just even like a conservative map because it goes up into Ukraine now on Khazaria 2.0. And of course, it's also been promoted by all this messianic lunacy of Chabad Lubavitch and other organizations within Judaism that are pushing the Third Temple and the taking of Al-Aqsa Mosque and all of this, and they're pushing their Noahide laws. And so, on one level, yes, Israel is not an ally or a partner. It controls the US. But on another level completely, Israel itself is controlled by a cult that's driven by this messianic lunacy. It's a satanic cult. It is the cult of Sabbatean Frankism. And this cult runs America via Israel. But it's much bigger than either of those two countries. And that's what I try to get at in my book. But regime chaos is a really important term here to understand, a really important concept, because Israel is just bent on creating havoc all around and then figuring out how to use that to its advantage and to become a regional hegemon. And it's not gonna stop just because there may or may not be a ceasefire right now. It's gonna keep doing this until we get enough of the world gets to the root of the problem and sees that this is a real mental health issue. You've got psychopaths and Satanists here that are running this thing, and they're not content unless they get everything absolutely under their control. As always, don't take my word for it. Do your own research. Please leave your comments, and all links are placed in the show notes below every time. If you like this video and feel that I've earned it, please like, share, subscribe, and follow. My work is on Rumble, BitChute, Odysee, Brighteon, Substack, YouTube, and thefreedomarticles.com.